And we live in the midst of a pharmacy of wonderful stuff out there that's just put there for our use, and it surrounds us everywhere. You step on it every day. And if you're lucky, it comes to visit you. And since I'm very observant about these kinds of things, I have noticed over the years that what you need in life comes to you. For instance, a couple of years ago, I was out back weeding the backyard, and I found a plant I hadn't seen before. And I said to my wife, I don't recognize this, but it looks familiar. So we let it sit, we let it grow for a while, and finally I realized it was called feverfew. And the first thing I said to my wife was, well, nobody in this house suffers from migraine headaches, so why has it come to us? And the next day we were sitting in the backyard of our neighbor, and we had the neighbors on both sides of us, and I said to them, I found this plant that's really good for migraines, but we don't suffer migraines. It turned out people on both sides of my house suffered the migraines. And this has happened over and over, time and time again. It happens to all of us. For instance, this here, this little thing here, right? Now, I don't know when it started, maybe 25 years ago, we started developing Lyme disease around here. And obviously people were looking for solutions, they were looking for cures for Lyme disease. Well, you know, I mean, people have now done a lot of research into it and have found a number of things that work efficiently. However, in the meantime, this invasive plant descended upon us and started putting out these rhizomes all underneath the soil. And this is a rhizome from the Japanese knotweed plant. This thing is chock-a-block full of resveratrol. And resveratrol, if you take it early enough, will stop Lyme disease in its tracks. Now, I'm a woods person. I'm in the woods all the time. I come home with ticks on me regularly. I get bitten regularly. As soon as I get bitten, I put myself on a course of resveratrol. And I have never developed Lyme disease. I've been bitten dozens of times by all kinds of ticks. Never had Lyme disease. And I think it's because of this stick here. Doesn't always look like this. It comes in bigger roots, it comes in longer roots. But this here, I dug this up out of my neighbour's yard. Now, if you look through all of these shelves, you're going to find exotic substances from all over the planet. Well, they're good. They do things for you. They're useful. However, all we really need is growing all around us. And it's more potent than stuff from abroad, from far away, because it has all the microbes that are in the soil, in the stuff that's growing. So it's sympathetic to our systems. And within a 5-minute walk of my house and a 10-minute drive of my house, every medicine I could possibly want is there. And I go every year and I gather it, and I have, this is a much larger version of what my basement looks like, but I have what I call my hobbit hole, and I have all my jars of dried herbs all through there. And my neighbours come to me all the time. Dr. Paul, they call me. I'm not a doctor, anything but. But they come to me because they have an issue like a sore throat or whatever they have. And I go down into my hobbit hole and I put together the ingredients and I give them, they make the tea, and it works. I mean, so all I can say is it works. I went into this as a skeptic. I'd heard about herbs, but I thought, maybe they work, maybe they don't. And I was working in the movie industry. This is about 30 years ago now. I was working in the movie industry, and this large unit fell and landed on my back and shattered my shoulder blade. I managed to drive home. I don't know how I did it. Managed to drive home, went to the hospital, got x-rays, went to see my local doctor, and he looked at the x-rays and he said, well look, you're going to have your arm in a sling for 3 months. He said, then you can start physical therapy. He said, I'll guarantee within 6 months you'll be back to work again. 6 months? I said, there's no way I'm going to wait 6 months. I mean, it's not the kind of job where I can do that. So I went out to my backyard and I picked some plants and I put them into the blender. Actually, I didn't do any of that. My wife did it. But I told her what to do. And we made a compost, a compress for my shoulder. And we put it on there every day for 2 weeks and alternated it between, I haven't told you what it is yet, we've alternated between that and plantain salve. Now I make a plantain salve, we're going to talk about that too. And I alternated it because this particular plant causes skin rashes, so you need the plantain salve to calm it down in between. Walked back into my doctor's office in 2.5 weeks to the day, and he had said to me, in 6 months you'll have full mobility back. I stood in front of him and I said, how's that for full mobility? It was fixed. It was fine. 2.5 weeks. Since then I have turned a lot of my friends onto that same herb, and it has the same effect with them. It heals bones. Anybody have any idea what herb I'm talking about? No?
I was gonna, yeah, we were gonna say comfrey, but does that cause rashes? Comfrey?
Yeah.
Oh, it is comfrey?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Comfrey.
I've never heard of it causing rashes. That's good to know.
Well, it has little fine hairs.
Oh, like the leaf. Yeah,
The leaves
yeah.
have little fine
Oh,
hairs
yeah.
and they irritate the skin.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you did the leaf, not the root.
No, the leaves,
You did
yeah.
the leaf. Cool.
Yeah, I try not to use roots unless I absolutely have to. Obviously, you lose the plant. Yeah, comfrey, and I'm telling you, it's been amazing. I've used it on many occasions since, and I've recommended it to all kinds of friends. So that was the turning point for me. At that point, I said to myself, herbs work. They work damn well. And since then, I could, every single thing here has a story behind it. I could spend 5 hours just talking about each thing that's going on here, because each one has a wonderful story for me. Here, I'll just take them as they come. This is called Lythrum salicaria. You have seen it growing in the fields and in marshlands. Purple loosestrife, considered a pest, a nuisance, because it likes to grow in wet channels. So when they irrigate, then this plant likes to move in. You know, they've ripped up the soil. Oh, this is great. They move in and they take over the channels. So it's a hated plant. However, I was reading through the internet one day, and I just came across this tiny little article out of the way. I'd never seen any reference to it ever before. And this guy said that you make a tea out of the flowers of the purple loosestrife, and it's really effective at treating any kind of eye problems. Now the funny thing was, I at that point thought, well, I'll gather it, I'll dry it, it might come in handy. And blow me if a week later my wife didn't develop a sty. So I said to her, look, let's try it. I've read about it, I don't know how it works, let's try it. And so I made a tea, and I got her to bathe her eye on it, and the following day I said to her, don't forget to take your tea to work so you can bathe your eye. She said, why? It's gone. It's gone, overnight. It happened 3 times. She had 3 styes, and 3 times it went overnight. I had a friend come to me, he had a sty so big it was closing his eye, it was horrendous. He said, he's been to doctors, he said, I don't know what to do about it. I said, well, you can try this, it might work, it might not. He called me the next day to say, it burst and now it's fine. It's no problem anymore.
You did this in compress form, or?
Just a tea,
Just a tea.
on a piece of paper towel is all we did with them. Yeah. It's called purple loosestrife, Lythrum salicaria. It grows in the marshes, it grows in the fields, you'll see it everywhere.
And you use the dried flowers?
Hmm?
You use the dried flowers?
This is the dry flowers, yes. This plant has a lot of miraculous properties to it. It's really good for treating internal bleeding because it's what do you call it, styptic. It closes up. It makes things suck together, you know. So if you've got internal bleeding, you drink a tea from that. But at the same time, it has mucilage in it, so it's soothing at the same time as healing up these areas. Another good plant for that is shepherd's purse. Again, it will do that for you. And it's always good to have these things on hand, you know. Anyway, let's go bottle by bottle, shall we? Okay. This is very popular with Native Americans, has been for centuries. Solidago odora. It is sweet goldenrod, and it grows profusely in the fields in this county. Profusely, sweet goldenrod. The tea from this is like a panacea. It's really, really good for colds and flus. And whenever I have a cold or flu or anything like that, I always add this to my teas because it's very effective. I could name dozens of ways in which this plant could be used, but primarily, I don't want to overwhelm you. Just think of it in terms of treating things like colds and flus. It's amazing, you know, a lot of these plants have specific uses, you know, people buy them for that purpose, but they run the gamut. They have a whole range of uses. Where are we? Oh, I'll get back to those afterwards. Here we go. This is, all right. This for me, this is the answer. Artemisia vulgaris. Sounds disgusting, vulgaris. This is a very common plant. It is an invasive plant. People try it, they're damnedest to keep it out of their yard. It's called mugwort. And mugwort, once you discover it, you'll see it's everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. If you go into a Korean supermarket, they sell it for $15 a pound. Or you can just go and hack it down from the roadside. Either way. I had a friend come into me one day, he said, I'm going to make the traditional beer, which uses mugwort. He said, I've just been down to New Jersey and back. He said, he rode an hour each way to this place down in New Jersey to buy mugwort. I said, come with me a minute. And we walked outside and I said, mugwort, mugwort. I said, in New Jersey. Yeah. So anyway, this is the flowers from the plant. I usually use the leaves from the plant. The flowers are just as potent as the leaves, but I didn't tend to gather them earlier in the year. I'll tell you much more about it in a minute. This is also mugwort, and it can be used in exactly the same way for exactly the same purposes as this, as sage. It's a smudge. The smoke will kill 98% of airborne bacteria. It sweetens the air. It's good to use in a sick room to freshen the air. And it's good to use in ceremonies. And I make these things myself. It's kind of falling apart. It's been sitting around for a long time. Now this particular one is a blend of mugwort and this cousin. This is Artemisia vulgaris, this is Artemisia annua. This has a whole story behind it too, which I will tell you eventually. So anyway, I like to burn these just to freshen the air up and you know, as I should say, kill bacteria out of the air. Okay, so mugwort. I discovered it a few years ago and started reading up on it. In fact, that looks like a mugwort leaf, but it's not. looks very similar though. I used to suffer very badly from nighttime leg cramps. My kidneys failed a few years ago. I had to have a kidney transplant. One of the side effects was I get bad leg cramps, nighttime leg cramps. And a lot of it's to do with magnesium. We all lack magnesium. It causes not just cramps, it causes depression and all kinds of other problems, not having sufficient magnesium. Mugwort is filled with magnesium. That's one of its uses, although it has many other purposes. So what I started doing was making a strong pot of mugwort tea and pouring it into a hot bath and laying in it. And I'm telling you, after 20 minutes of laying in that hot bath, you just feel so relaxed, so calm. It was wonderful. I would sleep the night having no problem with leg cramps. But making a big pot of tea and putting it in a bath and laying in it is not a convenient way to use it. Apart from which you've got to clean the bath afterwards. So I thought there's got to be other ways. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with making infused oils, or maybe some of you will be. Making an infused oil is a very straightforward thing. You chop up the herb, you put it into a container, you fill it up with oil, and you let it sit. And that's basically it. There's a lot more to it than that, but I mean, that's really the simpleness of it. So I made myself a mugwort oil. In fact, it's a convenient little applicator I use here. And what I do now is, when I know I'm going to start getting leg cramp problems, the first thing I do before I go to bed, or when I get out of the bath or the shower or whatever, is I take my oil and, whoops, got to unlock it first, and then see, it's a nice green oil, and I rub it all up and down my legs into my muscles, and it works, it does wonders. If I wake up in the middle of the night with leg cramps, I get up, I go to the bathroom, I put on my oil, and that's it, I sleep the rest of the night fine. So for me, it's been a wonderful thing. Mugwort is exceedingly relaxing. You can smoke mugwort. If you're very tense and you can't sleep and you smoke mugwort. I do it, and that's it. All the way. So there's been a number of times when I've used that as a way of relaxing at night. I make mugwort tea. Mugwort tea is very good because, again, it gives you the magnesium you need in your diet. Doesn't taste all that great, but then there's ways of making teas taste better, so there's ways around it. So my good old mugwort, I love. Oh my goodness, it's a lovely plant. All right, so let's get on to its cousin, Artemisia annua. Now this has a delightful aroma. It smells really great. Actually, I'm gonna let you guys pass it around. It needs to get revitalised. Just break up some of the cells a bit and get that smell going again. Oh yeah, you can just pass it around and smell it. Artemisia annua is a very feathery looking plant. It's very exotic looking, and it does grow wild in this county. About 3 years ago, I think it's either 3 or 4 years ago, it won a Nobel Prize, or at least the scientist who worked with it won a Nobel Prize, because it is the cure for malaria. All these years they've looked for cures for malaria, and it's right in that jar. The tea from that, drunk regularly, is just amazing. It also, as I say, it smells great, and when you burn it along with mugwort, it just puts a wonderful aroma in the air. But as I say, like all of these plants, that's only one of its many uses. It's a really potent, powerful plant. for instance, if you suffer thick blood, you don't need to go and start taking chemicals to thin your blood and make it flow better. This will do the trick. Just making teas from this does the same thing. It's coumarin is a plant or not a plant. Coumarin is I don't know if it's a compound or what it is, but you'll find it in a lot of different plants. Any plant that says sweet, like sweet cicely or sweet this, any plant that's called sweet is usually flavored with coumarin. It's exactly the same smell as the Palo Santo sticks. I don't know if you've ever burned them, but that wonderful aroma that comes off those. It's all from the same thing. It's coumarin, which is what coumadin is made from, or was initially made from, to use as a blood thinner. This is a safe blood thinner. It's going to give you no side effects, whereas the other stuff is pretty dangerous. So there it is. Where are we? All right. Well, we'll talk about this now. Poisons, toxins. A lot of plants are considered toxic. You won't find so many in this county, but there's a lot of plants that are considered toxic. Along with being toxic, just about every one of them is medicinal. It's all a matter of degree. It's like if you take, one pill for whatever problem you've got, or whether you take 20. The one pill will help to solve the problem, hopefully. Or the 20 will maybe put you into a coma. Who knows? And these berries are toxic. But if you take just 3 a day and you crunch on them, the substances in here dissolve the calcium in your joints. And I have helped so many people over the years. I cannot tell you, so many people who had arthritis issues, they had trouble walking, joint issues, all kinds of issues. And I give them 30 of these. Actually, no, I lie. I give them 90 of these. Tell them to take 3 a day for a month. And usually after 2 weeks or so, they either email me or call me to say, it's amazing. This 97-year-old woman said, this is a miracle. She was able to walk again. She was chair-bound, and she was able to walk again with these little berries that grow all over our county.
Pie berries?
No, this is poke berries.
Poke.
Yeah. Now, the poke bush, or it's not bush, it's a plant, but it grows like a bloody bush, has all of these little racemes of black berries along it, and if you squish them, they come out like a magenta red, beautiful colour. They stain your hands. That's the bush I'm talking about. Now, I'm not necessarily recommending that you do it, but what I'm saying is that it's there. It's in our county, and I have used it effectively so many times for myself. I used to suffer arthritis here and here. I mean, a number of spots. I had arthritic problems. I don't have them anymore. I never think about arthritis.
How do you dry the poke berries?
I hang them. Just hang them and let them dry. It takes a while. I tried doing it in my dehydrator. What a mess.
And you were saying you crunch on them? Because I've heard people swallowing them whole for that, but you crunch.
No good. No, if you swallow them whole, what happens is the seeds run right through you.
Yeah.
And you want the toxin in the seeds to be the medicinal part. So yes, you have to crunch them.
When you crunch them, and I've also heard slight hallucination. Is that a thing? Have you experienced that? Cool. Great.
I've never suffered it, and I've never known anybody else suffer it. But
cool. Not a bad.
No, but maybe if you did 20, you might get like
cool.
I mean, they talk about how poisonous this plant is, and I read a story from a woman who dug the root up and she chopped it up and cooked it and ate it. She ended up in hospital, but she didn't die. She was sick. So if you're going to eat a whole root like that and to survive it, a few little berries are not going to be that bad. So, there
But do you
go.
ever make the tincture of the poke root for lymphatic stuff?
I have poke
It's
root
very
tincture. I was
strong.
actually thinking of bringing some today. You know, I've brought some of my tinctures and oils, which I'll get onto in a minute. This summer was so wet. It was wonderful because I gathered pounds and pounds and pounds of mushrooms. So it was wonderful. I just want to show you 3 types that I got, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. This one is called maitake. This is like the king of mushrooms. This is the one that everybody seeks. It's just got a wonderful texture, wonderful flavour. And the nice thing about this is that if you dry it and reconstitute it, it gets basically back to the same as it was before you dried it. Some mushrooms you can reconstitute them, it's okay. Like chanterelles, I mean I love chanterelles, but once you've dried them, they never have the same character again. But these do.
And your
Plus
maitake, how do you spell it?
maitaki. Now maitake, along with many other of these wild mushrooms, are highly medicinal. There's a lot of uses for these plants in terms of, certainly in terms of building up your immune system, in being anti-cancer. I mean, they're just, if you eat these things regularly, you're doing your body a world of good. You can't eat these, because these are the turkey tail, the Trametes versicolor. Now they can't be eaten because they're tough and chewy, but you can make teas, tinctures, other forms of eating them, but not the things themselves. I actually use them quite often in teas, but I also make a lot of tinctures. I spend a lot of my time making all these fun things. Now I was talking about 2 minutes from my house. These mushrooms grow every year, 2 minutes from my house. Fairy ring mushrooms. There's a big patch of grass and they just cover them, and they're delicious. Marasmius aureatus, I've been eating these for years. This year there were so many I had to dry some, because I couldn't deal with them all. There were so many mushrooms everywhere this year. I'll be eating mushrooms for the next 10 years. All right, so let's talk about some of these things here. All right. See, this is the Trametes versicolor. This is the turkey tail tincture that I make. So now it's in a convenient little form. I don't have to do anything with it except for add it to things, or drip it under your tongue, or whatever you need to do. Most of these tinctures don't taste that great by themselves. They really need to be added to something. What have we got here? Okay, this is infused oil of yarrow. Now I was talking about infused oils before. It's a great way to use a lot of plants. Now yarrow is another really potent healing plant. There's 2, do I have the other one here? No, I don't. Do I? No. There's 2 plants that grow very commonly and are really, really good for so many uses, and that's yarrow and plantain. I noticed there was plantain up here, Plantago. Yeah, there we go. It's in here dried. Okay, I use yarrow and plantain for making salves, for making oils and making salves. I have a plantain and yarrow salve that I give to people. Anybody who develops poison ivy, I give it to them. I say, try this, and within 2 or 3 days it's gone. If I start seeing poison ivy coming out on me, which is rare, but if I do, this will get rid of it in no time at all. It's really effective. It's good for bee stings, and make a bee sting go away in no time. It's good for skin rashes. I mean, anything skin related, it's pretty good for. Not everything, but a lot of things skin related. So I always like to have this on hand, and I make sure that I have my first aid kit at all times. And this is my wound powder. Now this is made from dried yarrow leaves, and actually I've also got some shepherd's purse in there. So it's dried yarrow and shepherd's purse. Now you can have the most profuse cut, the pouring blood, and you take this and you sprinkle it on there and it stops. It's amazing. I mean, I've picked a scab off and had blood pouring down my arm. I just put this on and that's it, it stops. So you can see it was up to the top. I've used it a number of times. As I say, yarrow grows everywhere, and you just dry it and powder it, and it's so effective. So for all kinds of things. Again, it's good for internal bleeding, it's good for external bleeding, and dealing with rashes and nosebleeds. Oh yeah, you get a nosebleed that won't stop, that'll do the trick. And that's been very, in the middle of winter when it's so dry that your nose cracks and you can't stop the nose from bleeding. Well, that's the one I use. Oh, here we go, look.
Wait,
There's-
excuse me, how do you use it for the nosebleeds? Do you drink it or
No,
you
I just stuff it up there and that's it.
into your nostril?
Yeah, it's a powder meant for stopping stuff immediately.
Okay.
This is plantain yarrow salve. Now, if I've got just a small nosebleed or a nose infection, sometimes you get sores or whatever around your nose, this is wonderful. This does the trick. And again, it's yarrow and plantain and a myriad of different skin ailments it's good for. Oh, I love this stuff. And it's, as I say, you walk out of your house, you're going to step onto either of these plants because they're everywhere. The yarrow, the plantain is called white man's footsteps because everywhere that we went, it followed us across the states. Yeah.
Do you use yarrow tops and leaves, or just the leaves?
I tend to use, the tops too, and in the root sometimes. As I say, I try not to use roots if I don't need to, but once in a while you need something really strong. The roots are the most potent part of most of the plants. Well, we talk about my old buddy dandelion. Oh my God, it really bothers me when I see these commercials showing people squirting Raid onto dandelion. It's like, here you've got a toxin that's killing everybody, and there you've got the medicine that can cure so many of our problems, and you're spraying it, and it's like, one day I was driving past this guy and his daughter's swing set, and he's spraying this shit around the swing set because these plants are going to harm his daughter. It's like, what's wrong with you? And we're poisoning our whole water supply, our blood. There's not one of you that doesn't have glyphosate in your blood. That's a pretty tragic thing to have to consider, that there's no way of avoiding getting glyphosate in your blood, and that stuff is cancer causing, and there's a litany of things that stuff causes, and they know it, and they won't do anything about it because it's too profitable. But anyway, we need to obviously stay informed and on top of this, which most of us, I'm sure you folks do because you're here. But anyway, where are we now? Oh, okay, another one here. Ah, yes. This, last year, a friend and I went and gathered pine pollen. At a certain time of the year, it just rains down pine pollen. And if you can catch it at the right point, you can get bags, and not fill them, but certainly get a lot of pine pollen. So I made pine pollen tincture, which again is good for a myriad of different things, including building up your system and treating colds and flus and stuff like that. So I like to have that on hand. Yes. There's a tree that grows throughout Nyack, and again there's a lot of people that hate it because it drops these stinky berries. Everybody familiar with the one I'm talking about? Orange berries that lay all over the sidewalk and smell like vomit.
Ginkgo.
Ginkgo biloba. Well, it's like counterintuitive to take notice of that smell, because this is such a potent, wonderful, amazing plant that we should all have it in our lives. I every year go and gather the berries, and if you just take the flesh off the berries, you have these nuts inside, these wonderful nuts. And you roast these up and they're delicious. You can't eat too many because this is powerful medicine. This is really, really good medicine for your brain, for your whole system. It's just a good medicine. And where are we? Yeah. So the tincture. They've found that people with Alzheimer's can actually be reversed. That Alzheimer's can be reversed by using ginkgo biloba. Taking this tincture every day, people have turned around and got their brains back. And there's many other stories about how ginkgo can improve everything in your life. It runs a broad range of uses, but mostly it's about memory, and it's about building your brain up. And all you need to do with this is just make a tincture. You get alcohol, you get leaves, you put them together, and after 6 weeks you have this. Now you have to use the yellow leaves in the fall. So my block is covered in them because there are trees all around the block. So I go and I gather the berries when the berries fall, and I get my nuts, and then later in the season when the yellow leaves are on the ground, I pick up the yellow leaves and I make myself ginkgo biloba tincture. And I say I make myself, I will keep giving this stuff away to everybody. That's the way it is. All right, so I have to drink some tea here. I didn't drink any yet. Oh. I recognize that.
Paul, back to the dandelion. What do you use dandelion for?
Okay. Well, at a simple level, it's very good for things like your liver, kidney, digestive system. But I've been reading research lately that says that it's actually good for treating melanoma. Now, since I haven't had to deal with melanoma, I've not really researched it, although I guess I should. But I certainly am interested in finding out how it's used, how it's employed with melanoma. But I mean, dandelion is so darn good for you anyway, and the roots are very tasty. One of the ways I use the roots to make dandelion coffee. And I don't know if any of you have tried the dandelion coffee. I should bring some in. There you go. Okay, forward thinking. Dandelion coffee, basically you just chop the roots up, you dry them, you roast them. And it behaves just like regular coffee. It tastes a lot like regular coffee, except there's no caffeine. And the energy boost you feel is not a caffeinated boost, it's just a good healthy feeling of, wow, this is great. And I drink it a lot. And you can drink it just before you go to bed, whereas regular coffee obviously you can't. So I use dandelion in a number of different ways. I use it as a food a lot. I make dandelion jerky, and dandelion jerky is unbelievable. It's really good. It's always a big hit at parties. I run out of it regularly. You strip it and into thin strips. Then you can either dehydrate it, or you don't have to bother dehydrating it, and you saute it in a sauce of some sort. Anything you like. Any kind. I've done it with Indian spices, with teriyaki, whatever. I've done it a number of different ways. Once you've infused the flavor into the dandelion root, then you dehydrate it to the point where it's chewy. And then you put it in a bag and you carry it around and you just munch on it all day long. That way you can eat your dandelion and enjoy it. And I'm good friends with Chief Man of the Ramapos, and I can't get together with him without taking some of the dandelion jerky because he's just hooked on it, you know. I should teach him how to make it. But I also make a chopped meat out of dandelion root. And again, I use the same idea. I just chop it fine and I boil it up in something that gives it flavour. And then I've made, again, all different kinds of dishes out of dandelion root. It's amazing stuff, you know. Anyway, anybody got any other questions? Because
I was curious about you said at the beginning the Japanese knotweed. Did you say you take that right after you get
yes.
tick bite? But so that when you said resveratrol, you mean you take Japanese knotweed, right?
Well, what I do is I make a
yeah.
tincture from the Japanese knotweed root.
Yeah. And how much do you take? Like, I'm just curious. Like, do you go really hard on it? Like, how much?
The
do you
first day, yes.
Mm.
And then after that, I take a maintenance amount. You know, like the first day I'll take maybe 50 drops, and then after that, 20 drops a day, that kind of thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
For like a week or something?
Yeah.
Or? Okay.
And I use it like antibiotics, and hey, you know, I'm not saying it works. It works with me, you know.
Yeah.
And it has been claimed as well. They say that it kills spirochetes or spirochetes, whatever you want to call them. And the way they work is they get into your bloodstream and they swim around for about a week or so, and then they like to find something nice and soft and they screw into it like muscle or tissues. And then once they're installed, they're difficult to get out. While they're in your bloodstream, you can get them. And that's when the resveratrol really works well for me. But I've heard people say that they've actually had it for, you know, a year or two and the resveratrol still worked for them. But then others have tried it and it doesn't work. So, you know, but it's the same with herbs across the board. Some people are in their metabolism is suited for one herb but not the other, and so, you know, it's trial and error, you know.
And is there a time you've harvested it more?
Yeah, you don't harvest it until the aerial parts have died back.
Cool.
Then that means that the roots now have all the... It's the same with a lot of roots. You wait until the aerial parts have finished, you know, flowering or whatever they're going to do.
Cool.
You know, like dandelion. I gathered dandelion in November because the sugars have migrated back down to the roots and it makes a better coffee. Yeah, that's it.
Do you ever use the Japanese knotweed leaves for anything?
I don't use the leaves, although I'd like to try. I eat the shoots every spring. They taste a lot like rhubarb. If you like rhubarb, you'll enjoy dandelion, Japanese knotweed root. The only advice I say is don't simmer them or whatever for more than about 30 seconds because they turn to mush very quickly, very easily. That's the thing about wild foods foraging. You have to learn about the personalities of all the plants. A lot of people don't have luck with it because they're used to regular plants that have different cooking times or different responses, and you know, it's taken me a lot of years of talk about trial and error. It's been a lot more error than trial. But at least I know what doesn't work. I could write a good book about what doesn't work. How not to forage. Speaking of which, and books. Anybody who is interested in learning foraging, I mean, there's some great books out there. There's a few really good books out there. But this, for me, is like the Bible. This guy, he puts everything succinctly and clearly and laid out so there's no question about it, and he goes into really good detail on every plant so that you're left in no doubt as to how you process it and find it, use it, harvest it. It's called A Forager's Harvest. So if ever you're going to do seriously thinking gathering your own in the wild, I would recommend this. Of course, as I say, there's a lot of really good books out there too. But
And who's the author?
Samuel Thayer.
I have a oh, yeah,
Yes, go on.
sorry. No, I'm just curious, we don't have to like go down this road, but I am curious if you have a thought of this. Like someone that does forage and you're out in the wild in the woods a lot, do you have an opinion or like has a thought come to you about like what we do with the invasives in the sense of like let them do what they're like do you feel like they know and like let them or like management or I know that we don't have to go down that but I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, see the thing is whenever you want to try to research any kind of plant, you come across pages and pages of plant management talking about how to deal with them. It's like, yeah, I don't want to hear that shit. I know that here's a good medicine. I want to hear what this medicine does for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like the fact that Japanese knotweed literally takes over miles of embankment and everything else. But if we used plants the way they should be used, there wouldn't be a problem. You know, an invasive plant is only an invasive plant because we let it be an invasive plant. If we were to embrace it as a crop or as a medicine, then all of a sudden people would be out there, instead of ripping up all the ramps, they'd be out there ripping up the knotweed. You know? See, that's one of the problems is that there are popular plants now that are getting hit badly. A few years ago, it used to be American ginseng, and we wiped out a lot of American ginseng. And then, of course, bloodroot, and there's so many other plants now that are becoming endangered because, see, the thing is that the people that do that are not foragers. You know, they're entrepreneurs. They go and they clear crap, and the following year there's nothing there. You know, and that's insane. I mean, but you know, they've made their profit for the season. And what I do find also with things like ramps is that they get out there and they harvest them long before they're ready. Like you go to the markets and there's piddly little roots on them like that. If you're going to dig the root, wait until it's nice and fat, you know. Another 3 to 4 weeks later and the root is 3 to 4 times the size. But you go to the green markets in Manhattan and it's pathetic, you know. But you can't do much about that. However, on the other hand, as you say, invasives, there is a lot of plants that, like mugwort, that are considered invasive. Stinging nettle is an invasive plant, and look how wonderful that is, you know. I mean, we could go through these shelves. I could probably pick out 30 jars of invasive plants from there easily. But they're medicine, you know. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, as I say, this here, you know, I mean, purple loosestrife. I was on a panel with a guy talking about plants, and his take was, it's invasive, it's nasty, get rid of it. I don't want that crap on my land and that kind of thing. And my attitude was, but it's medicine and it heals you, so, you know. Everybody's got a different viewpoint. So, anybody got any other interesting things to bring up?
What is that tea? I drank it, I don't know what it was. The tea there, Richard.
There it is.
And?
Well, okay. It's a ruse, but it's not glabra. It's what do you call it again?
Sumac.
What's it called?
Sumac.
Sumac. Thank you. I don't know why I was. Doesn't know. Yeah, it's sumac, which grows in this county profusely. Well, not as profusely as it does upstate. The further upstate you get, the more sumacs you get. There's a small tree that tends to live around the edges of things, along highways and so on. And whenever I go camping upstate, we stop along the way and we pick a whole bunch of droops. That's the clusters of berries, and we pick a bunch of those and we take those with us. and make a tea like this. If you make a sun tea, it's very mild and quite enjoyable. The hotter the water you use, the more you bring out the bitterness, which is also a good component. So you know, it's a toss up one way or another as to what you want out of it. See, the thing is that teas are there's levels with teas. For instance, this is not a medicinal tea. It has medicinal components in it, but it hasn't had long enough to deliver most of those components to us. A medicinal tea should sit for 4 hours, sometimes 8 hours, sometimes longer. Then there's teas made out of roots and bark, which need to be simmered for quite a length of time, or these mushrooms, the turkey tail, I sometimes simmer that tea for 12, 14, 16 hours, depending on what you want to get from the plant, because at various levels it gives up different components. So when you're looking for a medicine in a tea, you've got to really realise what part you want. For instance, if you want the vitamin C out of it, then you should make a sun tea. You shouldn't be simmering the stuff up, because you're going to kill the vitamin C. So it's a bit of an art making a good medicinal tea.
And so what's the benefit of this?
Medicinally, I don't know.
It tastes good.
You know?
It's tasty. It's called lemonade plant. You
Yeah.
have it.
Yeah, I mean, it's never. I never really considered that medicinal. Although I dare say, if you look into it, there's definitely medicinal components to it. I think that every plant has some.
I mean, the tartness is astringent, so
Yeah, well, astringents are always good, of course. For a number of purposes. I like astringents.
people use it as a spice too.
What's
Like
that?
they use a sumac as a spice, like in
Yeah, the staghorn sumac that grows in this county, you can take the berries, you put them in a coffee mill, and you try to grind them up. The seeds are so hard that all you do is you grind up the rest of the berry, and the seed remains whole. Then you put it through a sieve, and you've got this fine red powder, and then you can use it for I've cooked a number of different meats in it to start with. It's very good for things like fatty, like duck. It's good for duck because it's high in acid and astringency, whereas the duck's very fatty, so it helps to balance the flavour of it. And they use it in cooking all kinds of meats in the Middle East, but we don't use it in this country so much, do we? Anybody got any other things to talk about? I mean, there's a lot I could go on.
Just going back to your comfrey, the way that you healed your shoulder, do you ever add heat to it while you're letting it sit?
I make a combination of comfrey and mugwort and cayenne. And that really helps with achy muscles like you wouldn't believe. I wish I brought it up with me. I got so much. I was looking through my shelves thinking, what can I take? There's so many things to choose from. But yeah, cayenne is very useful in terms of heating the area and helping accelerate healing. So yeah, and the funny thing is that ever since that shoulder blade healed up, I've never had an issue with it. Not one. No twinge or anything, which I don't know if that was because of the comfrey, but sure as hell did the trick. Yeah.
Did you do the mugwort, the comfrey, and the cayenne as like a how did you do it? Did you make it into
I
a
made them into an oil.
You made it into an
Yeah.
oil. Okay.
Primarily, that's the way I do it mostly. Making compresses is a very effective way to go, but it's messy and you have to go and get the fresh plant, and it's not as convenient, but it certainly is a lot more effective, which is what I did when I first did it with the shoulder. I'd probably do that again. As I say, it's messy. It's like, oh, here we go. I took some antibiotics once, much against my better judgment, but anyway. And it brought me out in the most horrible sores all over me. I just broke out everywhere. And I thought, what the heck am I going to do about this? So what I did was I took some curcumin, turmeric, and I put it in oil, and I rubbed that on me. And within a day or two, they all dried up and fell off. I didn't do it on my legs. I only did it up top here, right? And the ones on the legs stayed, the ones on the top all dried up and fell off. So I then did it with the legs, and the same happened there. Now, it's great, but that stuff stains like crazy. So you gotta put plastic over your furniture, and you sit isolated, not touch anything. But it did the trick, you know. I wonder if there's any way of getting the colour out of it, because it's so effective. So many of our culinary spices, though, are just amazing. That's one of the reasons I'm so interested in Indian cooking, because they think way beyond flavour. You know, everything has a purpose. I love that concept, you know, that you're eating medicine. You know, you go into a store and they give you packages of spices to cook with, but they're tailored specifically to your problems, you know. I love that concept. Same with the Chinese, but that's more medicine related rather than food related, you know. There you go. No.
So would it be like counterproductive to like even boil a comfrey leaf first, or at least dip it in hot water to get the oils starting to like kind of come out and then putting it on skin, or would that?
Well,
I'm
that's
just trying to think.
yeah. I mean, we did add hot water to
Yeah.
it. We didn't use it directly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. To do that. Comfrey is a problematic plant. I don't know if you've ever tried making a comfrey oil, but the long method, the 6-week method, very rarely ever works, because it is so filled with moisture that it goes rancid very easily. And I've tried, you know, wilting it. I've tried all kinds of different ways of making it, and the only way to do it really is the hot method, the like 48-hour method. But fortunately, I've had plenty now, so I'm in good shape when that's concerned. So I'm good for breaking something now. Actually, I last summer I was running down an embankment and I got my foot caught in a root, and that was just as I got to the road, and I hit the road knees and elbow, bang, right onto the hard road. Oh man, and because my knee was swelled out to here and so on. That was a good comfrey moment. I used comfrey on those, and it did the trick. Touch wood.
You use dried comfrey leaves in water? Is that what you used that time?
No, I used the oil then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I happen to have the oil handy. I like to use comfrey fresh if I can, because this time of the year, I mean, it's tough talking about herbs at this time of the year, because I like to take people out and show them the stuff growing, you know. So I'm hoping that even giving you the names, you can look up the plants to figure out what you're dealing with.
If you follow Paul, just sorry to interject, but if you follow Paul on Instagram or Facebook, he does a lot of plant walks in the summertime locally, and it's amazing. It's really fun.
Yeah, well, look, that's the whole point. You've got to have fun, otherwise why do it, you know? So we do have fun. That was weird.
It's noodle.
Yeah. No, but as I say, I try to write on Facebook every day if I can. I just started out doing this as I don't know, kind of fun. I had like 20 or 30 followers. I didn't really give it much thought, and just wrote, and all of a sudden I had more than 30. Then I had almost 100. And I thought, wow. But it's been exponential. Now I'm up to almost 5,000 on Facebook. And then they're going to stop me from taking on friends, which I think is rotten, but there you go. So I may have to change my format somehow so that I can reach more people. But the problem is it's kind of put a burden on me that I have to try to write every day. These days I just don't feel like it. Yeah. And right now I'm working in my hobbit hole. That's my basement. I call my hobbit hole because it's my daughter gave it that name because I have all these things and it just looks like a Anyway, and I've been painting. I do about 6 hours a day on painting for a show that's coming up. So fortunately the winter's here. I don't have to be out foraging. Well, there's nothing to forage, but that now it leaves me with the problem, what do I write about? Because I haven't been out there and, So it's tough at this time of the year to try to write every day. And keep it relevant. I mean, I could write, I know so much I could write, but it wouldn't all be relevant to the time. I want people to be able to use the information, And if something that happens in June, you're not going to wait that long, you're going to forget about it. That's why I like to keep it as up to date as possible, relevant to the time. During the winter, most of the medicine and food now comes from trees, because especially when the snow's on the ground. I mean, right now I can probably go out there and find chickweed and a few other plants that will survive the cold, but mostly it's all about trees right now, What tree was it I wrote about? I don't know, I thought yesterday, I'm going to write about that tree, and I've forgotten what it was now. Oh well, I'll figure it out. There's lots of trees around, they all do things. I mean, just recently, I wrote an article, you've got to try this, are you familiar with the shagbark hickory tree? The shagbark hickory nut tree is very obvious in the fact that it has these big pieces of bark all falling off the sides, and it has nuts. Well, somebody told me about something, and I kind of shrugged it off. I wasn't particularly thinking about it. And then she came round with a big batch of pieces of the bark that fallen off the tree. And we used that to make shagbark hickory syrup. And it is delicious. It is so good. And it requires putting the bark into an oven to get it to have a slightly smoky flavour, and then you boil it up in water and sugar and you reduce it until it's a syrup. And I swear it is so much like maple syrup, you wouldn't know. And it's 10 times cheaper to make. So since she did that, I said, I'm going to do this again, because it went in no time. I mean, it made time, all my neighbours tried it, and it was gone before you know it. So I decided I was going to get out in the woods and get some more shagbark and make myself some more of that syrup. Yum, yum. Something I haven't even talked about this. Here we go. The pine trees, the white pine, has, and I didn't put it in the box, I wish I had. I've been gathering the resin from the pine trees, and sometimes it comes out and it just drips down in big gooey masses on the side, and you scrape it off, put it in a pan, and then I heat it up, and it separates into the resin and the crap, and you can pull the resin off. and it becomes crystals. It's beautiful crystals of resin. Do you have it?
I'll just go get it.
Okay. And then I dissolve it in oil, and this is really, really effective for when you've got heavy chest colds and things like that. You're rubbing on your chest. It's so effective. So it was up to there. I've already been using quite a lot of it, and as I say, it's local and it's pretty easy to make. The only thing is it takes time, of course. You know, it takes time to make most of these things, but they're worth it as far as I'm concerned. You know, it's not like you have to stand and watch it. you do something, you leave it, and then you come back in a while and then do your next stage of it. A lot of what I do is like that. You know, people say, well, you spend so many hours doing these things. It's not really. You set something going and you walk away and do other things. Oh, there you go, yeah. Yeah, this is the unpurified version.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just from a tree.
Oh, no, it's still soft, yeah. Yeah, now if you melt this down and separate it out, what happens is the pine resin itself is very hard and crystal-like. Now, what you then do is you melt down the pine resin, you stir in some white, hardwood ash, right? You make sure it's cooked, burnt until it's white, and you stir those two together. It is like epoxy. It is so strong. The Native Americans used to use it. They used to seal their canoes with it. They used to seal their arrowheads with it. Very, very strong natural epoxy made from nature.
So how do you store it? Like if you make it with the ash?
How do you store it? Well, you make it as you need it.
Yeah, because then it'll just harden and that'll be that.
Yeah, exactly. You can add beeswax to it to make a softer one. Just add different things but it's a really wonderful substance and highly medicinal. Highly medicinal. You can chew it like chewing gum, you know. So I love this stuff, and as I say, it's pouring out of the sides of trees, you know.
That one's from Oregon. This tree was just like oozing. It was ridiculous. There was so much of it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great thing about nature. It does surprise with all kinds of wonderful stuff. I think there's a nut here. I don't think this is this? Looks like a nut to me.
Probably.
The only drawback for pine resin is that it's very, very sticky and hard to get off your hands.
That's true.
So, I'm just
And-
trying to think what else.
Medicinally, though, the pine is good for.
Sorry?
Medicinally, you said it's very strong medicinally.
Yeah, well, the thing is that during the winter, when there's very little else around and it's cold and flu season, what you can do is you pick the needles from the pine tree and you make a pine tea out of them. And there's two types of pine tea you can make. You can either simmer the pine needles, which brings some of the terpenoids out of the plant, if that's what you need. But primarily, you really want the vitamin C, so you make a sun tea out of it again and leave it, just warm water and let it sit for 24 hours before drinking it. But it's a very, very good, again, it just fortifies the body, it fights off colds and flus, it's antiviral. It's just as I say, the Native Americans have used it for centuries very effectively, so why not? We use the same thing. And there's a number of trees in that group, in the conifers that can be used similarly. The only problem is that some are not so good. Like for instance, if you're out west, don't make a tea out of ponderosa pine because it's poisonous. Or you on this side of the world, the yew tree looks like it's in the same family, which it is, I think, but it's, again, deadly. Funny thing about yews is that you can eat the berries until the cows come home and they're not going to do any damage. But don't eat the seed, which you can't, it's tough as a rock anyway. And don't eat the leaves or whatever else, but you know, don't make tea out of it, in other words. Yeah.
Isn't there there's like a yew tree in England, I think, right? That's like 13,000 years old or something.
I know, yeah. Yeah, it's surprising that it's still there because bow makers cut down almost every yew tree in Europe at one point, and so to have a tree that old in Europe, it must have been defended by, it must have been somebody's private property and you wouldn't let them touch it. Yeah.
So they make taminophen, or what is that, breast cancer medicine out of the yew
Yeah.
tree.
Well, that's what I was talking about before, is that in large amounts things are toxic, and in small amounts they can be very beneficial. You know, it's like so many of the medicines we've got from nature, they tend to, you know, they've used a lot of our poisons in, I mean, they have done for centuries, you know. All kinds of treatment come from deadly poisonous plants. You know, you hear about, if you ever read any Agatha Christie, they're always talking about the bedside medicine that this woman takes every night, and when you hear about it, it's from a highly toxic plant, but the doctor's giving it to her in small amounts, and then of course somebody comes along and doubles it up or triples it up and kills her, you know. So, yeah, wolfbane is one of those. Wolfbane is a very peculiar plant because there's been cases, and quite a few recorded cases, of gardeners that have just transplanted the plant and died. That's how potent it is. So I like to stay away from them when they're that potent.
It's an attractive plant.
Yeah. I would love to have some poison hemlock though. It doesn't grow in this county, but I want to get my hands on some poison hemlock. Because if ever I decide to pull out of this world, I want to go that way, the way that Socrates did.
Is it supposed to be pleasant?
So,
Is it supposed to be pleasant?
yeah, well, it you know, it starts at your extremities. They start to go numb, and then your arms get heavy, your legs get heavy, your body gets heavy, and then it hits your heart, and you're gone. Boom. You know, it's not like some plants that have you throwing up and eyes rolling and all that kind of stuff.
Well, some people can't touch foxglove or even lily of the valley because it slows down their heart so fast.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't that something? Motherwort. I actually gather motherwort and I make a tincture out of motherwort, and that grows very profusely around here. Now, it obviously, you know, it's for women, but it's also for the heart. And if you have an irregular heartbeat or your heart's racing, you take a few drops of the tincture, and it regulates your heartbeat. A great facility to have on hand if you need it. Because there have been times when I've been laying in bed at night, my heart's been thumping away, and it's like, whoa, what's going on here? But if I keep the tincture handy, I just take a few drops of that, and within seconds it's calmed down again. Yeah, it's amazing what, I mean, you know, these plants are just great. I mean, they do so many things for us if you just know how to use them. Because the thing is, I don't recommend anybody go out and just start making teas willy-nilly out of everything. Because it's the way you end up 10 foot under or 6 foot under. Yeah.
Pushing daisies.
Pushing daisies. Yeah, I used that phrase the other day.
I loved it. I thought it was so funny.
Do you have like an idea, if you have to take multiple tinctures in a day, and like would you spread them out? Or would you like take them all at once, like so that they're not?
Well, the only thing about taking them all at once is you like to get a bit crocked. Unless you make, you know, this tincture's made of other things other than alcohol, of course. You know, vinegar and glycerin and so on. But yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're taking them for, you know. Like sometimes I make tincture blends for specific purposes, but I enjoy it with a drop of tincture, you know, especially if it's got some bubbles in it.
Can I show you something?
Yeah.
Check this out. Smell it. You know what this is?
Smells familiar.
It's your favorite plant.
This mugwort?
It's flowering mugwort tincture that I decanted, and then I didn't want to waste it because it was so dark, so I added water. And this is the water.
Oh, it turned it cloudy.
Yeah, and it turned it like this green. It's been sitting for like 3 days.
Wow.
I just,
That's so cool.
I'll pass it around. You can smell it. It's super strong because I made it with like 190% alcohol. But this is water. But the color is so strong.
I know. Another thing, I don't know if you've tried this, but make a stinging nettle tea and then let it sit for 2 days.
And it gets green.
Intense, you know, intense green. It's amazing. It's like red cabbage. You do the same with red cabbage, it turns blue.
Have you ever used these as colors? Because you're a painter?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Like poke
We-
or purple?
Well, we do some dyeing, you know, clothes dyeing, what have you, using different plants. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what these plants can do, but again, it's, you know, you can't just make something and use it. It's all about timing and then what you add as a mordant to help fix it. And so dealing with dyes is a whole science unto itself, really.
We should have a class on dyes, don't you
Yeah,
think?
that would be nice.
Yeah.
Find somebody who can really introduce us to that. I mean, I've only dabbled in it, you know, no expert on
That
that.
sounds amazing.
But I have had fun. And pokeberries are great to dye with. Whoa, beautiful.
Or to press into ink so you could write with them.
Yeah. But the thing is about pokeberries is that it has this brilliant magenta colour. But if you put the berries into a pan and you start to burn them, they turn a whole range of reds to an intense red to a madder red, and you can get literally a range of reds out of the same berries. Just a matter of, you know, as I say, you burn them a little. And that got me out of some trouble. That really did. I used to work in the movie business. We were on location out at in Southampton, on the beach, and they came to me with a bunch of arrows, and they said, "We want these arrows to look like they're covered in blood." So I started looking through all my stuff, and I just didn't have anything that looked anywhere remotely like blood. But as we were coming to the location, I walked across the dunes and I was looking at the pokeberries. And I thought, I've got to gather some of those later. Well, I ran across, I got the pokeberries, I got them to get me a pan, and I heated the pokeberries in the pan until it turned blood red. And then I added some acrylic medium to it, and it made perfect blood. It looked like blood, and I just dipped the arrows in it and got me out of trouble.
Wow.
Yeah. That stuff when you need it.
I wanted to ask you about what you were talking about earlier with the dried pokeberries. You said that you had someone take a berry a day for 90 days. Is that correct?
3 berries a day.
Either 2 or 3, depending on your weight.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're dried
yes.
berries?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And no, as I say, for anything to do with joints, it's worth a try. But it's not going to kill you. It's not going to harm you. So it's always worth a try, you know. And as I say, I've had lots of success with it. You know, I could get people to write testimonials about that stuff. Yeah.
And you said it dissolves
The uric acid
the
collecting.
uric acid.
Yeah. And calcium.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And
so-
do you ever use the leaves like in cooking?
Oh yeah, I love them. It's one of my favourite greens. Yeah, you should only use the leaves of the plant when the stems are green. Once the stems start to turn red, that's the toxins building up. Now you can use the older leaves, but they have to be boiled 3 times to boil out the toxins. But with the younger leaves, they just need once, and that's it. I mean, in the south, the poke salad, which is basically that. It's just the cooked greens. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of plants out there that are considered toxic that I eat on a regular basis, and I've never had an issue with it. Black nightshade berries. Now, for some reason, over the course of time, those people writing books on plants got it confused that black nightshade berries were like the poison nightshade, the deadly nightshade. And so now they got a really bad rap, and I was reading about them forever saying, oh no, you don't touch these and don't eat them. And then one day I just read it, somebody said, no, I eat them, they're fine. So I tried it. I tried one day, 2 the next, and so on. And I've eaten as many as 50 and never had an issue. No,
These are the
no problem.
beautiful purple flowers.
Yeah.
The bittersweet nightshade. Okay.
Yeah, and the greens again. The greens are tasty and edible, and so I love the berries because you can use them in decorative ways, you know, in your food. I like decorating food with different wild things. It's fun. I don't know if anybody here have sweet peas growing in the yard. No. Sweet peas are not edible, or at least that's the theory. And the reason is that the pea pods, the seeds get very hard, and you just can't do anything with them. However, the young shoots are wonderful, and they're sweet, and they taste like peas, and they're great. So I go out and gather all the young shoots in the spring, and I use those. Spring is a great time for shoots of all kinds, you know. And I swear, I believe that I've stayed as healthy as I have all this time because of the food I eat. I eat medicine. That's it. My food is my medicine. I eat it regularly. And this time of the year, I feel bad because all I have is my preserved things, which is it's okay. But I miss my fresh greens, and you know. And I like the seasons. I mean, this is good. You know a season's coming along. You got to get out there and gather. Anybody familiar with autumn olives here? No? Oh God, you don't know what you're missing. It's really seriously. It's an invasive plant and considered as such. And oh no, you don't want that stuff growing here. Well, it's a tree that looks like an olive tree, but it grows little red berries.
They're so tasty.
And they're sweet tart berries that have 9 times the lycopene of tomatoes, and loaded with antioxidants, loaded with vitamin C, and the tree is loaded with berries. You can pick a gallon of these things in half an hour. I've done it on a number of occasions. And every year I gather a crap load of them, and I make autumn olive sauce, I make autumn olive butter, I make autumn olive everything. I fill my pies and tarts and things with them, and it's wonderful, and they taste great, and oh, you know.
I picked a whole bunch when I went with you once, but I couldn't get it home. We ate it all. Have you ever dried them?
Yes, a friend of mine dehydrated them. Yeah.
Wow. No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they lose a lot of their character. But I mean, hey, you know, I find that the best way to keep them, preserve them, is to make a sauce. And if you don't want to use it within the next few weeks, you freeze it. And then it's there available. But I'll tell you, the berries themselves, you could just throw them right in the freezer, and they sweeten up. They get sweeter in the freezer for some reason, and then you take them out and use them. I still have at least half a gallon in my freezer.
Wow.
Yeah. My freezer's chocolate block full of wild things. Where the wild things are in my freezer. But, See, I'm trying so hard to turn the world around when it comes to food. You know, the industrialized crap that they feed us nowadays is barely considered food anymore. I mean, it's been so overproduced that it doesn't have anywhere near the nutrients it used to have, but wild foods do. They're as nutrient rich as they ever were. They're just not so easy to eat. You know, we've made our foods convenient and easy, but they've lost a lot as a result. But with wild foods, it's a bit more difficult to make them as palatable sometimes, not always. But it's, you know, once you've learned the tricks, it really is worth the while, I have to say. I mean, look at me, 25 years old.
You do. Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. I hope you'll come back and talk more about whatever you want to talk about.
No, I like talking, you know.
And if we would like to follow you for a walk, how do we do that?
I would suggest just looking at my Facebook page. That's it, Paul Tappenden on Facebook. And under the Friends menu, you can select, get notifications, so that whenever I post anything, at least you get notified about it, and that way you'll stay updated with walks. I should have a much more sophisticated system, and I was on my way to developing it, and the girl that was helping me in that got a job in Arizona, so now I'm back to square one again. But that's okay, because as I say, I can still reach the world somehow. Yeah. But anyway, no, I mean, anybody is welcome to contact me at any time about anything. I constantly answer questions about things. You know, I want everybody to at least have a abiding interest in what nature has to offer us. You know, because I think it's a very magical place, and we don't appreciate it nearly enough in this life. But with enough people, we'll turn it around, I hope. Yeah. I mean, the fact that a place like this can open up now, I mean, seriously, imagine this 15 years ago in Rockland County. And there's two of them. There's one here and there's one in Nyack. I mean, that's mind-blowing as far as I'm concerned. I used to travel down to Bleecker Street to...
Aphrodisia.
That was Aphrodisia, yeah. I mean, I needed something, I had to drive to the city for it. That's why I stuck to just gathering my own. It was easier. The only one thing that I get that's not locally available is licorice root, because it has so many uses, and it's great for flavouring teas, and it's great for sore throats. Oh man, I love it. But other than that, I just stick to everything local, and it really, I mean, if you spend enough time looking and studying, you realise that it's all there, everything we need. We're walking over it every day. I would love to take some of you on walks, because there's so much out there to discover. I mean, I just barely scratched the surface with this stuff, you know. And I have so much to share, so I really would love to see you all come and have fun, because it's a lot of fun.
Yes.
No, really, it's like your birthday every day, you know? You're out there and all, oh, what I found, oh wow, it's free. Yeah. Oh.
That's great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.